Good evening, and welcome to another episode of Voices Beneath the Waves. My name is Stephanie Miele, and I have the pleasure of interviewing Mehgan Heaney-Grier. She's a pioneer of U.S. freediving and an ocean explorer. In '96, at the age of 19, she established the first U.S. freediving record in the constant weight category for both men and women, diving to 155 feet on a single breath. That following year, she extended the record to 165 feet. In 1998, she assembled and captained the first U.S. freediving team to compete in the Freediving World Cup in Italy. She was inducted into the Women's Divers Hall of Fame in 2000 at the age of 23, becoming the youngest woman ever inducted. Please help me welcome Mehgan to the podcast.
Hey, Steph.
How you doing?
Great. Good to be here.
Good. Yeah, same. I'm excited. This is going to be fun and just very low key. And I have pages of questions. I'm going to contain my enthusiasm, but
heck yeah, I love it.
Yes. So I met you for the first time at DEMA last year, and I remember you walking up to me, and we just exchanged like quick pleasantries, but you struck me as such a kind and welcoming individual, because I'm new to the Hall of Fame, and you just kind of gave me a big hug, and it was a pleasure to meet you in that circumstance. So thank you for making me feel welcome.
Oh, I love that. Thank you for sharing that. That's really nice to hear. So I appreciate it.
That was my first impression. So I obviously know of you and what you have done. So I truly don't even know where to start, but I am going to start with how did this start? So 19 is young. I mean, we both discussed we're of similar ages.
Yeah, right.
Back at our 19-year-old self, you think, wow. So in Mehgan's 19-year-old brain, what were you thinking? What was going on in your mind with freediving? How did it start?
Right. Well, so I'll take it back just slightly even from there, from 19, because that was when I did establish that first record. So it started, I moved to the Keys, which changed the entire trajectory of my life when I was 11. So my mom remarried my Grier dad. So Heaney-Grier is my biological father, which is Heaney, and then Grier is my stepdad. So that's my mom's last name. And so that dad was like the salty pirate down in the Florida Keys, sailing around and just experiencing island life. And so we moved from Minnesota. I was born in Duluth, Minnesota. So we moved from Minnesota to the Florida Keys in the 80s. And it literally, like I said, changed the whole path of my life. My default environment, which I think is so important to all of us, right? Your surrounding environment as a kid, that default environment became the mangrove forests and the flats where I could go exploring with my new best friend, which is still my best friend to this day, which I grew up right next door to, out in the flats, and just identifying creatures. And I could completely embrace that, like, science nerd within. And when my mom would say, like, you guys go outside, do something else, get out from underfoot type of thing, that was the environment I was going into. And we had an amazing, like, brackish alligator pond right behind the house and all this stuff. So it really was an incredible environment to grow up in. And sailing and free I learned to free dive, snorkeling, and all of that at that young age. So flash forward a little bit, I started modeling in Miami Beach around 14. And ironically, that was my mom's plan to keep me out of trouble. So I would, as a family, my mom, my sister, and I would go to Miami Beach every weekend, and I would go to castings and all this stuff. And so it became kind of like this cohesive family thing, which was nice. But I started doing that. And then my parents, all three to four of them, were never really following the cookie cutter, like what, maybe a traditional path is. There's a lot of entrepreneurial vibe in my family and things like that. And so I never had it in my head that I had to follow a certain path. And so when I started modeling, that was one thing. And then I started, I got toward the end of high school, and it was the traditional questions kids are still asked today, which is like, oh, are you thinking about college? Where are you going to college? What are you going to do? What do you want to be? And it's like, it was so overwhelming to me. Like,
Yeah.
I had no idea. And honestly, today I'm going to be 49 this summer, and I'm still like, oh, I want to know, figure out what I want to do when I grow up. Because I just, it's,
Yeah.
if nothing else, the common thread is resilience and perseverance and evolution.
Hmm. Yes.
um and it really is. So at that time, graduating high school at 17, I had it in my head I was not going to college right then. My mom wanted me to apply to a handful of schools that were my choice, and I did. And I got some acceptance letters that I declined because I was going to, model and just I had started spending all of my time after graduating high school on the water with a couple buddies that were commercial spear fishermen.
Ah,
And so this is where I, you know, had been doing skin diving and scuba diving and all of the things prior to graduating high school. But then when I started hanging out with these guys, I was, like I said, spending all of my time out on the water. If I wasn't up working in Miami Beach, and I started learning the basics. All of us together were like starting to dip our toes into some really, really basic freediving techniques, because there was not much of anything around here in the United States historically that made it accessible, right? Like one of my buddies had been a safety diver for one of the big international guys that was doing freediving records, kind of the real extreme kind of stunt stuff back then.
yes.
And he picked up just a couple of basic techniques, and I'm saying like really basic, like don't look at the bottom when you're going down because you create drag. So staying hydrodynamic, and taking some deep breaths before you go down, and like things like that. And so we started playing around with it. I was always kind of on my own while they were doing their commercial spearfishing, which I didn't know the safety. So I'll do that disclaimer. I didn't know the safe. There was no information around shallow water blackout and the safety of freediving and all of those things back then.
Yes.
That was accessible or anything. So I was always kind of on my own while they were down on tanks doing their commercial spearfishing. And so I started playing around. I had a old depth meter watch for the first time, and I was like, "Oh, this is so exciting! Let me see what I can do." And so I went to 87 feet on my first try, and I looked at my watch at like 60 feet, and I thought, well, I feel okay. So I'm going to go a little deeper. And within like, you're going so fast. And within a couple seconds, I'm like, oh my gosh, I better get back to the surface. This is like deeper than I've ever been. And it was kind of a surprise. So I got to the surface, and I was really excited to share with the guys, and they watched on the second time, and I went to 120 feet the second time. And so
Ah,
I kind of stumbled on that. And then it was like, oh, wow, I was doing it all the time. We all were going out and free diving and experiencing. And one of them was a underwater cameraman. And so he was, or, like at the start of his career. So he was filming everything. And so we were just
yeah.
all pushing the limits of our own limits, and just trial and error, figuring it out. Because like I said, there was no roadmap. There was nothing. And back then, you think back, there was no, World Wide Web, Google, all these things we have in our pocket now. It was
I
like
know.
I literally was going to the library in Key West, Florida,
Yeah.
looking up on microfiche and diving into the Dewey Decimal system and like looking at, and there was almost nothing in English on freediving, and there was certainly no training regimen or this, that, the other thing. And at some point at dinner, we were having like a team dinner over at my folks' house, and my dad was like, well, because I was like, there's no record. I don't know. Like, I want to do this, but what do I do? How do I do this? And he's like, well, why don't you establish the first US record then? I was like, that's an amazing idea. Let's do that. I mean, I was
Yeah.
19, and just, literally going with my gut. I
Yep.
loved being in the water. I loved free diving. I had stumbled upon this knack for doing it, and I started training from there. So,
Wow.
and I, by the way, I was, for anybody out there who has been told that you're crazy or you can't do that, or, whatever it is, I was literally told I was crazy on a regular basis. It was like, what are you doing? Why are you doing it? It just was all that. So you just have to like I compartmentalized, and I almost took it as a that was like a challenge for myself.
Oh
Like,
yeah. Fuel.
what can I do now? Yeah, you put that in the fuel tank, to keep it going. So yeah, that was
Yeah.
a really long roundabout way to answer that question, but that's where it
No, but
started.
it's good because it's feeding me more information for the question. So for the people that are listening, free diving versus scuba diving. Free diving for the viewership is breath hold diving. In your Is there something that drew you to free diving versus scuba, or do you have a love, or is there, if you had to hierarchy those, what would you choose?
Well, for me, I prefer free diving. But I do love scuba diving as well. I'm an assistant instructor. I don't Most of the scuba diving that I've done, which is extensive, has been for work with stunt diving and different productions and things like that. So
Yep.
I definitely am a very experienced scuba diver, but I prefer free diving because it really just is, it's the way that I experience the environment and have this kind of my own spiritual experience, really. It really, it's my church, I
Yeah.
love going. It's that saltwater gospel, right?
Yeah.
Just really being able to be down there on my own power, and um it's just a completely different experience, really. And for
It is.
anybody that hasn't tried it, I mean, it used to be considered such a daredevil stunt and all of this, but for me, and at some point along the way, which we can get into more, but it really turned into, because I only did those two records early on, and then I decided that for me, it was more important to experience the ocean and connect with the ocean. And I got very uh, kind of deeply immersed in the marine conservation world and things like that. And so it became more about bottom time and the experience that I was able to take away in that connection, versus um, diving deep and going for records and all of that. And so, yeah, so that was, it's definitely, free diving is my preference, but I do enjoy both. And I will say, my son, who just turned 13, got scuba certified a year and a half ago. He's been a great free diver since he was like 5, 6 years old. I was excited that he actually prefers free diving too, but he loves to scuba dive as well because you can see things in a different way. You can go down and
Absolutely.
hang out and look at see an enemy covered in clownfish and just watch them for the whole dive if you want. So
Yeah.
it is a different experience, but I think they serve a different purpose too.
I would agree, and it's neat that you mentioned your kiddo and the free diving, scuba diving, because mine, we kind of had the opposite. So we taught him to dive when he was young, but he went through a free diving course, and part of it was for him to understand. This is my personal view, and I'm really curious about yours, and it's one of my questions. I There's something almost out of body when you are freediving. It is quiet, it is peaceful, it is your own. But when you're doing the training, you're learning panic management. And I think your brain just goes to that quiet spot where you know you're safe, you know what to do. And we always compliment, we not always, but we complimented the scuba and the free diving as a panic management tool in case things don't go according to plan. What
Yeah.
is your viewpoint on that?
Oh yeah. I think anybody that free dives is going to improve their scuba diving skills through free diving. So it's it can be, I know I can hold my breath for a certain amount of time. It's remaining calm. It's understanding that panic is going to eat up your oxygen. It's all
Hmm.
of those just it's building your toolkit, right? Like I always
Yes.
love to have more tools in my toolbox. And I think that as a scuba diver, for people that are exclusively scuba divers out there, I highly recommend that you learn the basics of freediving, because it is going to improve your how long your tank is lasting. It's going to improve your experience underwater, I think, of just being able to remain calm. And if something did go sideways underwater, while you're scuba diving, you know that that you're packing these tools that you can pull out in the case of emergency, break glass, and in case of emergency type of thing. Yeah, for
Yeah,
sure.
it's because seeing the underwater environment through the eyes of the kids has been an amazing gift to me as a parent, and to foster that, because and I'm going to dive into this after, but just creating ocean stewards and getting them when they're young so that they understand why it's important, how they can be a part of it, and it's something that they carry with them as they age and as they tell their peers. And we were talking pre-show. My son is literally driving back from a shark tagging for research at out of the University of Miami with school. So he's
So
had
cool.
that experience to be able to track the sharks, to understand basic biology and whatnot. But it's neat. It's a way to see science in action, if you will. So
Yeah.
speaking of science in action, um, you you have a degree in ecology and evolutionary biology and anthropology.
Right.
So how do those three go together?
Right. Well,
Talk me through
yeah.
that.
I thought during my schooling that there would be a lot more overlap, because anthropology, the study of everything human, right, of being human,
Yes.
of our
Yes.
experience and the evolution of who and what we are, would really dovetail nicely into
Yes.
evolution, for one, and
Yes.
biology. It was pretty separate, but the way that those all came together for me, ecology and evolutionary biology was one degree, and that was my main focus. And then there were several classes in there that were really heavy for me. So I'm very much kind of the science geek. I love biology and science and wildlife and nature and all of those things. I can just go forever on these things.
Yeah.
There are a lot of hard classes that are really delve deeply into numbers. Like
Oh
all
yeah.
the math classes and all of, in a different way, chemistry and physics and all these things that were not necessarily my jam. So I picked up the second major in anthropology for my therapy, to get through the
Ah.
difficult classes that
Yes.
that weren't, so I loved in my e-bio degree, the biology one, the animal behavior classes, and the different things having to do with
Yeah.
really deeply getting into the nature side of things. And so yeah, so I picked up that second degree, that second major in anthropology, to really just plow through the difficult ones in biology. It got me through because it was so fascinating. I was taking maritime history and,
Yes.
different levels of that, and just like the physical anthropology. It was completely fascinating, and in many ways different than and I think that's part of the whole college experience, right? Like that you're developing your critical thinking skills, but you're also just learning things that you might have never had exposure to had you not, taken this class that you just had to do to fill a credit or something. And by the way, I started my university experience the day after my 30th birthday. So I was
Ah.
very much a non-traditional student. And yeah, and it's never too late. I love academia. I would love to go back at some point again, just even to
Yeah.
audit classes. I just love
Oh yeah.
soaking it in,
Absolutely.
for sure.
So how did that talk me through the 20 to 30? What was that time frame,
What
that
was I
time
doing?
period? Yeah, what were
Yeah.
you doing?
it was like, it feels like a whole, well, lifetime ago, right? That I had a whole career in that span of time. It I was doing such a variety of things. It's been a very eclectic path along the way. And so I started out with doing the Freediver records,
Yep.
um, and establishing, the first US freedive record, which for men and women in the constant weight category. And it was at a time when women's empowerment was really grabbing headlines, right? It was,
Hmm.
the Williams sisters, so Serena and Venus
Yep.
Williams, were in the headlines. Fiona Apple and uh Alanis Morissette, and like different,
Yes.
like, so in the music realm there were like really strong messages from women. Gabby Reese was, headlining with
Oh.
different things for beach volleyball and Olympic sports and
Yep.
things like that. So that was kind of that um uh, first time in my lifetime that I was witnessing that women's empowerment headlining things. And so it was, a lot of it was timing, and it launched into a bunch of different realms. My story went out on the AP Wire and
Yep.
was seen far and wide. It had good, we sent out good pictures and good video with it, and it made a good story. And so it was good for grabbing headlines, and a lot of the way, throughout the whole story, it was breaking stereotypes. And
Yeah.
so all of these things together made for good headlines. The reason I share that is that it gave me a lot of exposure. And so, we're talking pre internet days. And so
Yeah.
what happened from there is I was able to get a lot of connections coming in to take my modeling career underwater, literally. So from there, I
Wow.
started doing, I really became the go-to person for underwater work if it was in front of the camera. So
Hmm.
I was doing commercials and mermaid jobs and all of that. And like I said, this was pre-internet, so it was really based off of your connections and who, would put your name in the hat, or who was like, "Hey, I know how to get a hold of her," and that type of thing. So I started doing, like I said, commercials and
Yep.
television shows and things like that. Before long, I did my very first legit Hollywood stunt diving job for Pirates of the Caribbean, the first movie,
Ah.
which was really exciting and quite the one to, like, which we didn't know at the time. It was just in
Oh, I
production.
know.
Nobody had any idea how big the franchise is going to be. Um, so anyway, yeah, so that was my first stunt diving job. And then meanwhile, back on the ranch, kind of, I was still diving with my buddies every day. We were collecting footage. One of the guys is Manny Puig, and he's a good mix. If anybody doesn't know him, he's a good mix to describe it, of like Tarzan and Jesus, of how he looks. And so he had a really unique approach, which was very 90s. So this is back in the 1990s,
Oh yeah.
and he had a really different approach to predators, marine predators, alligators, sharks, things like that. And we were working hands-on underwater with marine predators. And I I don't do that kind of work anymore. I don't really, I think we've come so far in conservation that we don't need hands-on work like that anymore, that
Hmm.
we've evolved, we understand predators in such a different way. But at the time, it was a good counterbalance to the prevailing mentality, which was eat or kill or be killed type of thing.
Yeah.
And so we were working hands-on, free diving, no chainmail, no cages, no tanks, no weapons of any kind, and we were interacting with these animals. And we were collecting all of this footage, which eventually became a series on Animal Planet that debuted the same year as the Crocodile Hunter series on Animal Planet, back
Ah.
in 99 or 2000. And so we had a
Wow.
series on there, which was my first experience producing, and I was also one of the on camera hosts. And um yeah, and we that launched us into, so well, and we had been doing segment work and things like that before, but we were
Yeah.
doing all of this animal work and the freediving and all of that on segment television and documentary work and leading expeditions and stuff. So throughout that whole time between being 20 and going to university at 30, it was really a wild ride that God, I learned so much, and it was exciting. I mean,
Yeah.
working with sharks and gators and being on camera and learning to produce and then doing the stunt diving. Into the Blue was another one that I was the stunt diver for Jessica Alba and the other leading lady, Ashley Scott. And I was doing all the free diving and scuba diving and shark work and living in the Bahamas during that time. And like it was so exciting. But it
Yeah.
also was that pivotal moment for me where I was like, okay, this is amazing. I love it. But I felt compelled to do something different and
Yep.
like I wanted to find a path to give back in some way. And
Hmm.
for me, that was what led me to university and really working in marine conservation.
Nice. So that's where I was going to go next, was with your why. So a lot of us have reasons of why we do things, and some of
Sure.
them can be, I mean, it's a varying scope of reasons, but there's a person I follow. His name is Simon Sinek, and
Yep.
he does cool. So you know of Simon Sinek then.
I know the why.
um
Yes.
okay, so what is your why are you doing what you're doing? What's the deep core why that you have?
I think that has evolved over time as well,
Hmm.
with the different decades of life, and I think that for me, and right now, just full disclosure and transparency, like I am in the middle of another evolution where I'm like really um diligently working to find my next purpose, right? So my why consistently has been to empower uh myself empower myself and others to do what they can, to be part of something bigger than just ourselves. And so that's what drives me, is that consistently, that I really want to be able to leave this place better in some way than it would have been had I not been here. And it changed, of course, when I became a mom, because that becomes really focused on your kiddo, and can see it. Yeah, I was able to see it in a different way after I had
Hmm.
him, and but yeah, I think that really, if you boil it down for me, even though the mechanism and the operations have evolved over time, I think that would be that common thread through it all. That when I was able to find something that I was really passionate about and excited about, taking that, sharing it with other people, and then giving some takeaways that are actionable, to like be able to infuse that, like your own passion in your life, and be able to activate that and really have some action items in that way. And so that's my why.
It's a great why, and I think, to your point of, I th- I think irrespective of where we are in our life's journey, year to year they can look different, decade to decade it can look different, depending upon experiences, changing of jobs, changing of what we want to do. Some
Yeah.
of these paths, a lot of these paths are not linear, and
Oh God,
the
nobody's path
evolution.
is linear.
No,
There's no
no,
way.
no, it's really hard to find that, but just, I think, giving ourselves a little bit of grace, and just being open to what could potentially be. But as long as
Yeah.
I think you understand where the core why is, I don't think you can ever be led astray. And that is what I have personally learned over these decades in the changing industry, becoming a mom, business owner, all that stuff. At my core, I'm the same. It's just different experiences are hitting us, I think, at different times.
Yeah.
So Yeah, it's definitely it's nice to be able to see people grow and really achieve, and what you've achieved and built for yourself is stunning.
Well,
So
thank you. Thank you. Like I
it
said, I'm still, still evolving and literally trying to figure it out all over again. And here's the
yes.
difference that compared to when I was in my 20s and my 30s is that every every year that passes, all of us are gaining new information, new ingredients, right? To who we are and what we know and how we move through the world. And I used to get really hung up on what other people thought I should do or thought I should be, or really being afraid to put out there where I was at or if I was struggling or whatever, because from the outside it seemed like everything had to look a certain way, right? I had a very public career with the stunt diving and just being in the limelight since I was 19 years old. And so, and I mean it's all relative, right? Like it's for me it was a lot of exposure, and it was the basis of my work, of like
Mhm.
what led to the next thing along the way each time, right? All my different jobs and things were piggybacking on one another. um but I would get really hung up on that, and when I moved to Colorado in 2007, went to school, that was a complete change. I got married, I had my son, and then throughout that whole time being landlocked here and all of that, and then it was a big struggle of really figuring out, okay, so that I'm a diver, I'm a free diver, this has been my life, this has been my career, it's been my contribution. Now who am I here? And now I couldn't travel as freely because I had decided to become a mom. And so then you had I was struggling in there, and it was really difficult to find my purpose outside of home in those days. And I struggled, and I wasn't being transparent or necessarily forthcoming with that because honestly I felt some shame in it. Like I should know how to do this, and I should, and there is no, everybody's path is different, and what I've learned is that it's okay. And when I finally, um, 2019, I went, my now ex-husband and I went through divorce, and I was figuring out again, who am I now? And I had my son was 5 at the time, 5 going on 6, and then COVID hit. And so then I was like home and newly single mom and all of these things. And it was that whole thing all over again. And it was, but in a new way that we all experienced with the pandemic. And it was this really interesting space where it was like, I couldn't keep my struggle a secret anymore. I needed to get back out there and work. And and I wasn't operating in the same capacity as I was when I was in my 20s, footloose and fancy free, and could, ebb and flow with being self-employed and all these things and couch surf when I needed to. And it wasn't the same world for me in that way. And so what happened was I was honest with a buddy of mine out here that owned it. He just retired now, but he owned a dive shop for God over 40 years out here, which is amazing. Steve Weaver, he owned
Oh yes.
Beaver's Dive and Travel.
Yes. Yes,
And
yes, yes.
he was like, "Hey, Meg," because my son and I had been to St. Lucia with him at some point and loved it. It was so exciting, and we had such a blast. And he's like, "Hey, Meg, you wanna go on this? We're going to St. Lucia again. You and Cash should come with on the trip." And I'm like, I can't be planning trips right now. Like, I need a real job, Like, I need to start earning money again. And I mean, stepping over that hurdle internally, pride, choking, like it was a big deal for me. I'm like, I'm struggling. I need to figure out what my next steps are. And outwardly, I feel like my life presented in a certain way to other people that it was always, always rosy, and it's always like, oh, you're a badass and you're doing this and you're doing that, and what's the next adventure? And I'm like, I am so struggling. And being able to ask for help. So me, the reason I share that story is because one, I think everybody goes through struggles. Two,
Oh,
I think that we're the hardest on ourselves.
oh yeah.
Three, three, being able to say that to my buddy Steve Weaver has launched me into my new path where I am now, another evolution where I'm working as a marketing manager. So he had recently had an opening with Weaver's Dive and Travel, and he was like, "Would you ever want to do social media for me and do that?" And meanwhile, I had been applying for every job under the sun out here in Colorado, landlocked, right? So like my
Yes.
diving stuff meant nothing to anybody that was looking at my resume. It's like, what? This is so random. So, and it's like all over the place. Connect the dots. What's it gonna make? Um, and what I was either overqualified, or
Yeah.
it was like I didn't have that whatever I was applying for on my resume, even though I could probably, like, I'm very capable in every way, right? So I'm confident in that way. But in today's world, it's not so much like you meet people in person anymore. You just send in your resume, as anybody who's been on the job hunt has experienced. It's very
Yes.
like, impersonal. So I present the best in person, and lo and behold, coming through my contacts, people I knew already, I knew what I was capable of, even if it wasn't specifically on my resume in that way. So I
Yeah.
said, "Oh God, Steve, I would love to do that for you. I really need to just, get busy and start earning again and all of that." And so anyway, he and this is coming off of, by the way, I had done two expeditions with Discovery Channel for Treasure Quest Snake Island. So I had
Ah,
been, yeah, doing this, like, it was again, I was like leading the dive safety and the dive team for for these two expeditions down in South America, and it was like flashy and exciting and dangerous and all of this stuff. And I was doing that just a couple years before my divorce and before COVID. So it was it was a big kind of swallowing my pride and just being like, hey, this is where I'm at, being honest about that and saying, I need help. And so Steve hired me, and I was doing the social media and email news, the newsletters and all of that, and
yeah.
started working. And now, flash forward, I work as a marketing manager. So for the first time in my life, have an employer with like benefits and everything. I'm adulting so hard. But it's really because I've been, an entrepreneur and self-employed my entire
Yeah.
life since I was 14, right? And anyway, so yeah, I'm working with Explorer Ventures Liveaboard Fleet as their marketing manager. And then also, which is almost full time. And then I have another client that I'm marketing manager for, which is Greenwater Marine Sciences Offshore, which is an amazing company that's building a worldwide fleet of small, intermediate size research vessels. So that
Huh.
are accessible to scientists and humanitarian needs and exploration and all of that. So, and then Explorer Ventures Liveaboard Fleet, for anybody that doesn't know, it's amazing. It's like it's the liveaboard fleet. We have vessels all over the world. And what I love about it is I'm able to tie in my storytelling, my passion for diving in the ocean with both of them, my passion for marine conservation in the Greenwater Marine Sciences Offshore, which is called GMSO. So with them, which is, for scientific research vessels. And then with Explorer Ventures Fleet, it's the first liveaboard fleet. We had a partnership early on working with the Reef World Foundation and Greenfins, and we have four Greenfin certified vessels. And like, I mean, it
Yes.
all ties in so well together. And it all started, I mean, I've been building that skill set since the, beginning of my career of storytelling and marketing and
Yeah.
all of that and brand building. But putting that into action and being able to have that as my career now, took me overcoming my own fear and my own um, just being hard on myself internally. That terrible negative voice that we all have that just goes on repeat, right? And really whipping that into shape. So
Yeah, that's a powerful voice that you have to quiet. And I do want
yeah.
to unpack a little bit there because one, I think it's very, very brave of you to be so vulnerable in such an open way. And all of us have struggles, irrespective of who we are, what we've done, what we've accomplished. There have been struggles, and being able to ask for help is probably one of the most powerful things that you can do for yourself.
Oh
And
yeah.
that is sometimes so hard. And I
It
really
took me
think,
over a decade. Like it literally was paralyzing. Yeah. And
yes,
I feel
yes,
like I'm a very capable, very brave person in many ways. Yet at the same time, there was this duality, right? Where I was like crippling myself. Like it was
yes,
paralyzing. It was paralyzing.
yes.
Yeah.
And those feelings of I'm not good enough, or the shame comes in, and the silence in that headspace is deafening. Sometimes you don't know which way to turn, and to
Yeah.
be able to have to be able to have that thought to say I need help is amazing. So I really hope that out of everything we've said today, that people take away, they really take away that. And
Yeah, it's allowing yourself to evolve, giving yourself
yes,
room for that. Change is inevitable. It is the only constant in this world. And being able to understand that you're allowed to change, you're allowed to evolve, and nobody needs to give you permission to do that. And it was like, yeah, I mean that is the biggest gift you can give yourself is that
oh, a
grace and
thousand percent.
understanding to let yourself evolve. And
There's a quote,
even if people are watching you, like evolve. More power to
yes,
you, you know? It's
yes,
yeah.
a, 1,000%. There's a quote, and I'm not quoting it verbatim, but it's by Eleanor Roosevelt, and it always sticks with me, and it's always in the back of my head when those fears of doubt and shame come in. And she had said, nobody can make you feel inferior without your permission, and it's true.
Yeah. It's so
It's
true.
true. And but that,
But you get caught up in it, you know? Like I
oh yeah,
remember I would be even around, you know, people that I've known for since I was a kid, you know, like in the dive industry and stuff like that. And it would be, oh wow, what you know, doing? And I would almost panic because I'd be like, what is my relevance now in where I'm at now? And how do I explain this? And how, you know, and it was it was really empowering learning experience now that I'm on the other side of that part of it, right? And I'm still
yeah,
evolving, like I said.
yes,
So, yeah.
yes. It's a powerful story. And so this kind of leads into this, the Women Divers Hall of Fame legacy. So looking at the inductees and individuals that know of the Hall of Fame, do you see a common why that connects everybody in that? Does that speak to you at all? That's a
Within
weird question.
Woodoff?
Within what off? It's
Yeah. I mean, I
regardless
think,
of whether you're a scientist, a photographer, record
right.
breakers, there's a why that's threaded between a sisterhood.
Yeah.
Do you feel
I mean,
that?
I really think, yeah, I think more than anything, it's the giving back, you know, that one of the founding principles of Women Divers Hall of Fame is you know, honoring women that have given back to the diving community, to women in the diving community specifically. And I think that being able to contribute in that way is the common thread for sure.
Absolutely. And speaking of giving back, which you beautifully led into the next question, which
Didn't.
is the imperfect conservationist.
Yes.
Walk me through that. How did that come about? Tell me the impetus of that.
Yeah, for sure. So first, I'm at 9% battery. I plugged my thing in my computer in before, but the light switch isn't on. So hold that thought. This
Sure.
is all live, guys. So you got to just, you know, hang in there.
I love it.
Okay. So, um, okay, now we're good. I won't like disappear.
Yeah.
like the Bermuda Triangle. Okay, so the imperfect conservationist. So that came about uh, because I was feeling overwhelmed and completely helpless with the state of the environment, the planet, the ocean in particular,
Yep.
because that, of course, as probably everybody that is watching this and yourself and everything, like that's our jam, right? Is the ocean.
Oh yeah.
So, but I couldn't help feeling like so many of us have, where it's like, what does it even matter what I do? Who cares? Like it's a drop in the bucket. And so it was like, okay, hold the phone, because really needing to flip that script, that like the drop in the bucket is what the ocean is made up of, right? Like every drop matters and counts. And there's so many good things that Dr. Sylvia Earle has put out, just messages, and Dr. Jane Goodall have said and quoted. And I'm not great at redoing, like, bring verbatim, like you said
Yes.
earlier, doing quotes.
Me either.
I'm losing my words. But really, it's like Jane Goodall has said, her quote is that, we all make an impact every day, and we get to choose what kind of impact that is. It can be good, it can be
It's true.
bad, it can, make a difference, positive or negative, in somebody else's life. And really, where the imperfect conservationist was born from is that feeling of helplessness and overwhelm, that I knew if I was feeling that, working in marine conservation and really being surrounded by, experts in the field that know how to do things in a better way or different way, and that type of thing. So if I was feeling overwhelmed and helpless, likelihood there were other people out there that were feeling that way
Yeah.
also. And so I kind of bringing together my skill set of working on camera and um, public speaking, which I started doing when I was 19 for at-risk youth in Key West, through some of the groups down there. I just, bringing all those together in production and everything. I did some episodes of The Imperfect Conservationist, which is on YouTube, and I, I'm going to be revisiting that coming up, because I did it for a while, and then, over the pandemic, and then everything got
Yeah.
super busy again with
Yes.
marketing and all of that. So I will be revisiting it, but I do encourage, I think that the messages are evergreen, and I do encourage people to go check it out on YouTube, on my YouTube channel, and just,
Yes.
look up The Imperfect Conservationist. But it really, it's the idea of it all is that it's bite-sized, actionable items that it's conservation action. It's things that you can do in your everyday life that change the immediate circle around you. And then that ripples out. So I always love to say that conservation is contagious in the best way. So when you start doing something, it makes you feel really good inside. There's all this wonderful new research coming out. I mean, it's not
Yes.
even that new. In the last few years, it's been coming out that what an impact that has on our mental health, of being able to not only being able to change the world around you in some way, but then being able to inspire somebody else to do that as well, and how that radiates out, and how that also like gives back in a very unique way. So it's something that I've experienced with public speaking, with kids in particular, that I'll get comments after, like, oh, thank you so much, the kid, it really, God, they feel so inspired, or whatever it is. And I'm like, I'm the one who got, like, I feel it's 100% equal, if not me getting more out of it, because you're getting that feedback from somebody that you inspired to make a change. And so anyway, long story short, it's bite-sized, actionable conservation action that you can implement in your everyday life, and it actually makes a difference,
It's
which
fantastic.
we all
It
love
was
making a
fantastic
difference.
because I was coming up with the questions and I saw that in the bio. So I started looking at it. It was fantastic. So well done.
Thank
And
you, appreciate
you
that.
broke it down so people, again, to your point, don't feel overwhelmed. it's something that you can do. It's not overwhelming, and it just adds and builds. And to your point, it feels good to do something for somebody else. And I found that, especially when I am overwhelmed, stressed, it could be whatever I'm doing. To be there for somebody else, to bring somebody a coffee, to be a listening ear, to buy lunch for somebody, or just to listen and give back. It
Yeah.
feels good. It
Yep.
just feels good, and not expecting anything from it. That just speaks to me, and I heard that through your voice too. So, um,
Yeah.
okay. So you mentioned youth. So
Yes.
it's definitely, it changes perspective when you become a parent.
Sure.
And so with the younger generation literally living in your house and seeing the things that you're doing and you're passionate about, as a parent, are there things that you want your son to take away, from the world of conservation? And if so, what would you like to impart on him so he carries it forward?
Sure. Uh, One is that we always make a difference. Each and every one of us makes a difference. Also, each and every one of us has a superpower, and it's going to be different for everybody. Like
Mm-hmm.
well, specifically, like we were talking about, the ocean and marine conservation, and um, you know, working with nonprofits in that sector or whatever it is, like that's my realm. But what I love to do is, and for like speaking with kids is really my heart. Like I love, the middle school and high school age and up
Yeah.
into early college and things, that age group, because I think that it's such a great time in life to
Yeah.
understand the concept that and the importance of being part of something bigger than yourself. And that
Mm-hmm.
becomes even more relevant in today's world where, with social media in particular and all of that kind of instant, feedback that we're getting, that we're basing our value, our worth, what we can give to the world, our purpose being contingent on likes and follows and comments and all of that. So we're getting that, like, that quick dopamine hit of what that feedback is giving us,
Yep.
when that is short lived and that is very f- uh fickle, right? Like, and it's also,
Yeah.
it's in a way, it's that finite source. But when you
Mm-hmm.
are able to um get into something that you're passionate about. So, like I said, ocean for us and all of that, but there's other things as well, that I'm into as well. Like I foster puppies and dogs and and kittens and cats. And so that's been my other heart since I was a tiny little kid. And so I do that because it makes me happy and I see the difference that I make in this life I saved, right? Like you're literally
Yes.
saving a life. And so that is important to me. And so I have gotten involved in that because I wanted more community, and I'm in this landlocked place, and so it's a little bit different. There's a big ocean community out here in Colorado. But it still was important to me to get involved in something that was bigger than me
Mm-hmm.
and be able to take part in that. And so I think that is, to bring it back around to specifically answering your question, is that importance of understanding like what it means to be part of something bigger than yourself, and then the importance of it because of what that, it's not only your contribution to the world, but it's also what you get back from that. And that it has a lot more, it has deeper roots, it builds
Mm-hmm.
community, and it checks off so many boxes of what we need, to be healthy in body, mind, and spirit, and yeah, and I think that, I when I do my talks, my public speaking, I always say, like, I ride in on the adventure wagon, like Snake Island and sharks and freediving and all this. Like it's so fun and exciting. Let's talk about conservation. Why that was important to me when I launched into that part of my career, and how that idea ties into what you need to figure out with your life and what you can dive into, and giving yourself the space and grace and all of that to build your resilience and to evolve as you go. And that can change, but really at the heart of that, it's being part of something bigger than you. And that is a lesson I learned when I was first doing my freedive training, kind of blazing the trail. It was literally trial and error. So blacking out and figuring it out and all of that, and I don't say that flippantly. It was just, there was no recipe to follow. And so we learned safety big time in a lot of really scary ways back then. But it was on one particular dive I remember, and I would do it after that regularly, but I'd be down at the bottom of my dive, wherever I was going down to, and I would look up, and I would mentally and just spiritually feel the weight of that fishbowl I was in, and how I was so small and seemingly insignificant, but part of it all. And so,
Yeah.
I mean, it literally will take your breath away when you have that, when you realize that connection. And so it was something that I would mirror dive after dive after dive, and I still do to this day, of that view when you're down there on your own power, and just having that respect for the environment, and knowing that you're also part of it and you're part of this bigger system. So I think
Yeah.
that that translates into building community and giving back, and what we can each
Yeah.
do.
It's to your point, yes, when you are down and you look up and it is quiet, you feel about this big, and it's
Yep.
just so amazing to have that feeling. And um it truly is. So
Yeah, and I mean,
that
people can have that experience too, even if you're not a free diver. If you've been on a boat, where you're out of eyeshot of land, and it's a
yeah,
starry night, and you're like, whoa, I'm part of that, you know?
yeah.
I mean, just blow, or up on a mountaintop, like having that experience. Like, I love, we camp all summer long out here in Colorado and stuff. And I
Oh,
mean, getting out there and experiencing that, it's that same kind of like just visceral feeling, where you kind of get
yes.
back to our, I don't know, just ancestry, where we came from,
Yeah. Yeah, you feel it deep. It's a phenomenal feeling to be that,
Yeah,
to understand that awe and that raw power of the
for sure.
the universe and everything that it encompasses. And it's, isn't it just so amazing that we're part of it? So
Yeah.
um well, thank you for taking
Thank
the
you.
time to be here with us. I mean, I could, gosh, I've gone way over. I'm so sorry. But
No, it's
this
great. I
was
love this.
amazing, and I probably asked half my questions, but
Uh,
I just went off on tangents. And but it was really, it's nice to get to know your path, and for you to be so open and raw with everybody here listening to this and who will listen to it, that your path wasn't linear. Asking for help took some time, but the power that you felt when you did it was a game changer for you. And I hope people take that and sit on it. And those that are maybe struggling asking for help, to maybe this will be this is the sign that you need to
yes.
take that step and ask for some help. So thank you again for being with us.
Yeah, thank you.
And so tune in next month. We have every month we have a guest. So Mehgan, thank you. And
Yeah, thank you. And I encourage
yeah,
people to connect with me as well. I love connecting on
yes,
social media, or through my website or whatever. Reach out. I love connecting with people. So
yes, everything is tagged.
MeganHeaney-Grier.com.
Perfect. Yes, and it's all tagged with the through the Women Divers Hall of Fame. So find Mehgan, contact her, and follow her along. She's got an amazing story, and I have a feeling more fun things ahead.
More to come.
Yay! Yay!
Thanks,
Thank
Steph.
you. Thank you again for tuning in tonight. Mehgan is a phenomenal inspiration, and when the world feels heavy, being able to reach down deep and be able to ask for help and or to be able to provide that help, I think carries us through some uncertain times. Thank you for allowing me to host this podcast series. The Women Divers Hall of Fame is a nonprofit. We do a lot with scholarships and grants. This year, we've hit over $1 million being distributed through those scholarships and grants over the 25 years that the Hall of Fame has been in play. So thank you again, and tune in next month. Thank you. Good night.